Run fast, run flat at the 2025 ASICS Gold Coast Marathon. Entries open 2nd of December. Head to goldcoastmarathon.com.au for more info. All right, this weekend's guest on the Inside Running podcast is one of the biggest names in American marathoning. Just last month, she was the second American and ninth overall at the Chicago Marathon. And in 2023, she was ninth at the World Championships held in Budapest. She is coached by Australian running legend Benita Willis. She won the Gold Coast Marathon in 2022 and spent some time training here recently. Welcome to the Inside Running podcast, Lindsay Flanagan.
Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan. And when you guys reached out, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to chat.
I'm looking forward to chatting. You're based in Boulder at the moment, so it's your Sunday afternoon, Monday morning my time.
Yes, I know. Yeah, it is Sunday afternoon. We're gearing up for Thanksgiving. I know that's not really a thing over there for you guys, but that's coming up on Thursday. So like a lot of like excitement going on.
Yeah, well, we know that due to the Black Friday sales. And then that's because that's connected to Thanksgiving, isn't it? I'm probably sounding really naive here about American culture, but I think they're linked in somehow.
It is. Yeah. And I was actually in Australia last year on American Thanksgiving, and I was loving it because there was all this stuff about like Black Friday, but I was like, you guys don't even celebrate Thanksgiving. But I loved it. Everything was on sale. It was great.
I feel like the whole month is just Black Friday sales at the moment as well. Like Facebook and Instagram are dangerous places with all the ads coming up in the algorithms. So yeah, bits happening there. But hey, congratulations on Chicago Marathon. You must be stoked with that performance. And we'll get more deeper into the race in a second. But what's the last like 4 or 5 weeks looked like post-marathon?
Yeah, honestly, that race, I mean, I didn't really know what to expect going in. And like, we can kind of talk about that. Like, had like probably the worst injury of my career kind of going into it. So it was like a little bit of an abbreviated buildup. But honestly, just to go, I'm actually from Chicago. So like super special to like be there on the comeback, like have a really good race, have my family there. So that was a lot of fun. And then, took a little bit of a vacation afterwards. And then probably the last 3 weeks have gotten back into like more normal training. I actually ran an 8K road race yesterday, which is really funny. Like I've never run that distance before, but just like, I think because I missed, I think I was out for almost 15 weeks kind of before Chicago. So I was like, my body like feels good. I want to do more racing, but it's kind of funny here. Our racing season is very much like over. So it's kind of actually hard to find anything, but overall, like my body feels good, have like slowly gotten back into things and then kind of already looking at what we're going to do next year now.
Yeah, okay, that's exciting. And when you say like getting back into things, like I know you're a pretty high mileage runner, like does that mean you're back at 100 miles a week already or a bit less, a bit more?
I'm trying to think. I think the last 3 weeks I was back up to like 110 miles. So I'm not sure exactly what that is in Ks.
Yeah,
I have
about
to think
176 Ks, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love the math. There you go.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that was an easy one.
So that's like when I'm not marathon training, that's kind of like a normal like mileage week. So probably the last 3 weeks have been like that.
Yeah, okay. I have got a note here to talk about your mileage because I want to get into that a bit later on as well. But let's go back to Chicago, 2:23:31, a PB. Mr. World Champs qualifier by 1 second though. Second American and ninth overall. You must have been stoked with that one.
I was, and it's very funny. Like everyone that like I talked to, they'll be like, "Man, you missed this it by 1 second." And it's funny. I mean, you ran Chicago, so you make that turn and you can see the clock. And in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, I've got so much time to get there. Like, and then you realize that straightaway is much longer than you think it is. And I was like, but honestly, yes, to miss it by 1 second was, you're like, oh, that's a bummer. But to run like a 70-second PR after like a pretty tough year, like I was super happy with that.
Yeah, and how'd the race pan out for you? Like, was it pretty even splits? Like, you were 71-23 and then 72-07. I had stories about trying to find that lead American pack early, thinking they were maybe going to go 69-30 through the first half, and it just as people looking at each other, no one was really interested. And yeah, what was your race experience like?
Yeah, it was kind of funny. So going in, like Benita and I were very honest with each other, and it was like we don't really know exactly what kind of fitness I was in. I was like coming off an injury. I had run one really low key race like early August. I ran one half. It was like 1:10:50 something, and so I was like, man, like training, like I felt like it had gone well, but like I don't know, as you know, coming back from an injury, you never really know. So kind of our plan was like be a little bit conservative and just kind of like feel out the pace in the first half. And it was funny, like they were going to have a pacer for 71:15 to 71:45, but that's like a pretty big range, you know? So I was like, you know, we're going to like start, we'll kind of see where we naturally fall. So we kind of got into it, and like that kind of group splintered a little bit. So naturally we're kind of right around that like 71:15-ish, you know, group. And so I kind of stuck with that pacer probably through the first half. And then slowly the group started to, you know, as it does, like people kind of do their own thing. And then kind of just kept it pretty consistent throughout. Like the splits were relatively even. And I think looking back at that race, like it was exciting. Like I love that I could, you know, be so consistent in my splits. But like one thing I wish I could have done more was like take a little bit of a risk and actually like really let myself hurt. But I think just because I was so nervous and I just wanted to have a good experience, I didn't really let myself go there like I have in other races. So it makes me excited for what can happen, you know, maybe in the future.
Yeah, and everything went smooth, like nutrition went down all good, like you felt, we're just talking about the weather off air, how we didn't notice any wind, but coming from an Australian, like, cooler temperature, it was definitely a bit hot, wasn't it? Like, that was a bit of my excuse. I'm like, yeah, it was warmer than ideal.
Yeah, I mean, it was warmer, but I think, like, my perception of a hot race is so, like, skewed now, like, after Budapest, which was, like, so hot and humid, and then our trials in Orlando were also hot. So then you get to Chicago, and I thought it was great. I was like, I didn't think it was hot, but I mean, I will say it was not ideal temperature by any mean. I think it was like 60 when we started, which, you know, you want it to be closer to 40. So I totally get that. But yeah, I used precision fuel, and I mean, everything went down well. I had extra gels with me just in case, but like from that standpoint, like energy levels were great throughout. So honestly, no complaints.
Oh, we're a big fan of precision here at the show. Did you use the big ones, the 90-gram ones, or just 30s?
I used the 30s.
Yeah.
I do like, I'll alternate like drink mix and then gels, drink mix. And so, I love the 30s. And I just want them to have a bigger presence here in the US because I'm like, man, that stuff is so good.
Yeah, okay. So it's not too big in the US yet. Because big over here.
It's growing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we're definitely growing. They're actually going to be the sponsor of CIM, which is one of our big marathons coming up in 2 weeks. So so that's big for them to be like on course at a big race.
Yeah. What'd you think when you heard the winning female time when you crossed the line?
So it's funny. So, you know, you finish and you're excited because you're like, oh, like, you know, I just ran a PR. I'm excited. And then my agent is right there. And of course, I'm like, so who won the race? And he just kind of looked at me and I was like, what? And he's like, you're never going to guess the time. And I was like, all right, well, the world record at the time was what? It was 2:11. So I'm like, okay, was it like 2:11 low? And then when he told me 2:09, I could not comprehend what I had just heard. And I was like, we're going to need to revisit this like after I've had like a minute. But yeah, I was pretty shocked by that.
Yeah, because there's a massive walk. I'm not sure if the pros have to do it, but when I was in that American development field, the walk back to the tent, it feels like it goes forever after you've run a marathon. And the lead cars drove past me, so they had the winning times on the top of, you know, both the lead men and the lead women's car. And I was just like, oh, that must be the lead, you know, American male's time. Or, you know, maybe second was super long time behind. Like, I did not even, I'm a guy who does a running podcast every week, and it didn't even, you know, plant a seed in my head that could potentially be the winning women's marathon time. Like, just incredible.
No, it was crazy. And that was my thought. I was like, oh my gosh, did she finish with the American men? Like, how did this all pan out? And then I think she would have been top 10 in the whole race.
Yeah, correct? I think she was 9th or 10th overall. Like, whole field.
Crazy. Just crazy.
Does it like give you motivation, or do you like sit there and like feel a bit down, being like you're so like you're one of the best in your country, but you're so far off winning that race that's held in your hometown?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't really get a lot of motivation from that. It was more like it's kind of hard because you're excited about 223, and of course, like I know I can run better, and I know like there's a long way to go to keep improving. But then you see something like 209, and to me that's just, I know that I'm never gonna run 209. And so it's like I don't know how you felt about it, but yeah, it was just a little bit crazy.
Yeah, I'm a school teacher, so I was trying to explain to my kids at school that I still had a good day running 220, but I was 11 minutes behind the winning female, which they were like, oh, we thought you were actually a good runner, but they could not, it was not relatable at all to those
And you're
guys.
like,
So,
I wish I could just like they can't even comprehend like what that means. But yeah,
yeah.
209 is
To-
wild.
Incredible, incredible. Hey, tell us about the injury. So because you were out here in Australia, which I want to get to, and then the US trials where I think you were eighth, and then an injury between then and Chicago. Is that what happened?
Yeah, so it was a little bit crazy. So I was in Adelaide, had a great build up. It was, the fittest I had felt. And then went to the trials and obviously, wasn't my day, finished eighth. I think it was like 226 low. And then of course, as we all do, you're like, oh my gosh, I want to do something else. Like I want to salvage this fitness. So we kind of looked at the calendar and I was like, I think I can be ready for an April race. And we kind of settled on Hamburg, which I think was like maybe mid, late April. And so I was like, okay, that'll be my next race. So, kind of got back into training. And then I was actually supposed to run the New York half as well. So it was actually the week of the New York half. I went out and like, obviously I'm back in Boulder. It's like, it's snowy and it's wet. And, I changed into my flats to do a session, and the road was like a little bit icy, but I didn't think that much of it. So I like started my, workout. It was like some tempo repeats, and I took this tight left turn, and all of a sudden my ankle just like gave out. And I don't know, anyone who's had like a fracture before, immediately what that feels like. And I was like, I definitely just broke a bone. Like something bad just happened. So just like kind of like wobbled back to the car, went and like immediately called my agent. I was like, I'm supposed to leave for New York in 2 days. I'm thinking that's like probably not going to happen. So he was like, just go get an MRI and let's like assess. So I did, went, got an MRI, and I had fractured my fibula, which is kind of a rare injury for a runner. It's more like these fast, like a soccer player or someone who's making like quick lateral turns. And it wasn't really like a running injury. And in my mind, I was like, oh, this isn't a big deal. I'm going to be out for like a couple of weeks. Like, I bet this is like just a little reaction. And then, what I thought was going to be 3 weeks was actually 12 weeks of no running at all, just absolutely off. And then probably another 3 to 4 weeks when you do like the baby jogs and the walk runs. So it was probably more of like a 15 to 16 week like injury as a whole.
Yeah, wow. And it was just like a freak accident, just taking the corner too quick and slipping out.
Yeah. It was and that was the thing. It was such a freak accident. And I was like, oh my gosh, like what just happened? And like, I was like racking and like, there was no warning signs like before that anything bad was going to happen. And it was unfortunate, but it was one of those things that like, obviously no one ever wants to get hurt, but I never would have taken that much time off on my own. So I'm like, maybe that was a blessing that obviously I just like needed a break and I was able to take it. Like obviously wasn't ideal and made the Chicago kind of build up a little bit more questionable, but it was what it was.
Yeah, and because you had that extended period of time off, do you think you've bounced back better from Chicago? Like you probably hit Chicago with the momentum and you can keep that rolling instead of having now a break off the back of it?
Yeah, I do think so. Like during the, the 12 weeks I was off, I don't know if you guys have them there, but do you guys have ellipticos there? It's like that stand up. Like
I remember Meb Kefleski always being the marketing guy for them. I know what you're talking about, but yeah, never seen one in Australia.
Yeah, so that was like what I did for cross. I only did that. Like I couldn't swim because I like couldn't kick my legs. And so I was just on this elliptical for like hours and hours when I was hurt. And that thing, like, I mean, I live at altitude. It was winter. So it was like wind and cold and hills. And that thing was miserable. Like it was way harder than any running I had ever done. So I think I kept like in really good aerobic shape. It was just a matter of like getting my legs to kind of come back around. So I do think that, like, all that time of no impact, after Chicago, I was like, I actually feel pretty good. Like, I was out for so long, like, I'm ready to kind of keep going.
Yeah, there's something in that for sure. Do a lot of people use those ellipticos? Like, is that socially acceptable on the streets of Boulder to be using one of those? Or you get some weird looks?
Where I live, it's not, there are a couple people that have them, but it's definitely rare. And you still get people that stop and point and are like hanging out of the car window to be like, what is that thing? But as hard as it was, I do think it was like, it is the best cross training because you can be outside. Like, it's more of like a running movement. But again, I mean, us runners, like, it's not fun to do anything other than run. So
Yeah. Hey, your PB that you broke at Chicago, that was previously set at the Gold Coast, wasn't it? 2022? Was that your first time in Australia?
It was my first time in Australia. I actually stayed with Benita like the week before the race, and then yeah, it was great. I absolutely love that race, and I was actually supposed to come for the half this past year, but when I was injured, I couldn't obviously get out there. But yeah, I have nothing but good memories from Gold Coast.
Did was that the reason you came to that one because of Benita, like the connection there?
Yeah, so that the year I came, I actually ran Paris Marathon in April, and I had done that one, and we had kind of talked, like, I came off of it and I was kind of like, I was a little bit disappointed. I think I had run like 2:26 in Paris, and I was like, man, I just felt like I was in better shape. And Benita's like, well, there is a marathon here in July, and here you could never run a marathon in July. It's like way too hot. It's like our summer. So I was like, oh, I'm kind of intrigued by that. So yeah, we got to talking, and she's like, no, I really think you should give it a go. And so we kind of got back into training, and she kind of obviously like opened my eyes to it. And I knew about the race because it's an ASICS race, and Sarah Hall has done the half, I think, a couple times. So like a couple Americans have gone over there, but no one had done the marathon before. But yeah, it was a little bit of like, I had never done that quick of a turnaround, to do. I think it was like a 10 weeks between Paris and Gold Coast. But yeah, it was great. I love that race.
Pulled it off. So I can cut this question if you can't remember, but do you have any memories of the pacemaker that day?
I do. Oh my gosh. I'm trying to. Did you pace us?
It wasn't me, but it was my co-host on the podcast. Yeah, Brad Croker, his name is. Yeah, he paces Gold Coast pretty much every year. He loves it, and then I think he finished that year and maybe ran 2:23 or 2:22. But he has fond memories of pacing you because it was a record at the time.
Yeah, he did pace us, and it was really funny. I think we got to 30K, and he kind of turned to me and he was like, "Okay, I think I feel good. I'm going to take off now." And I was like, I don't feel nearly as good as you do. And so then he took off, and then I saw him after the race, and he's like, man, I wish I would have just run with you, because as soon as I left you, like, I felt terrible. And I was like, same. So maybe next time I come, we'll run again.
Yeah, he paced again this year as well, and they broke your course record, because you just got the course record, I think, in 2022. Didn't you? Was it 8 seconds or 10 seconds you went under by?
It was pretty close. And honestly, at the time, like, I think they told us the course records, but I was like, oh, that's not going to be something I'm going to do. And then it ended up happening. But I think Benita did say, I think it was a Japanese woman broke it this year.
Yeah. Hey, and then you had another quick backup that same year to then do New York. You were 11th there in 2:29. So a big year of marathoning.
That was a big year. I had actually never done 3. And so New York was probably the latest you could go after Gold Coast, which is why we kind of picked it. And it was a lot of marathoning, but I wouldn't change it. Like, that was such a fun year. And I don't know, I kind of think we only get to do this for so long. So if your body feels good and you're able to, and like kind of turn it around, you should. So I'm glad I did the 3 that year.
Yeah. And then the world champs last year, like that top 10 finish. Tell us about the preparation. What were you doing to get ready for the conditions as well? Because pretty brutal with the heat there. Even some of the footage was pretty confronting, watching some of the men and the women late in the race. But you ran through the field and, got it right, obviously, on the day.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. So leading into that race, my biggest concern was the heat, because prior to that, like, I was not good in the heat, like really just had like awful races whenever it was hot. And so kind of the big thing, I was like, let's figure out what I need to do to make that not happen and kind of crumble in the heat. So talk to our kind of governing body, has like a whole group of doctors, and they were like, you guys have to get in the sauna. You have to be ready for this. So it was a lot of like running and then going straight into the sauna for like 20 to 30 minutes, because kind of the science behind it is like your core temperature has to be up to kind of get the most out of being in the sauna. Like, if you were just to like go sit in it, you're not kind of getting as much of a benefit. So it was probably 4 or 5 times a week for the last maybe 6 weeks, kind of running straight into the sauna. And it was summer here, which is very, very hot. So it was kind of perfect. Like you're already getting a heat component, then you get in the sauna and then you're, kind of just a little bit extra there.
Yeah, and then like we were doing workouts in like overdressed and stuff as well.
No, I actually wasn't. And the reason why I wasn't was because I think you can overdo it a little bit. I was like, okay, I don't think I could do heat, altitude, sauna, overdressing, something. I was just like a little bit concerned. And I was running pretty high volume at that point. I think for that buildup, I was like pretty close to 140 miles, which is maybe, oh,
230 Ks. It's 235 maybe, somewhere around there.
yeah, something like it's got to be somewhere like similar to that. So yeah, I was running quite a bit, so I was a little hesitant to do that. So honestly, I think the sauna was enough, and just kind of figuring out also how to like train your body to take in more fluids, because obviously I knew that was something that was going to be something that I was going to have to do in the race. So pretty much getting used to like a lot more fluids, and then just kind of learning how to suffer in the heat a little bit more.
Yeah. So 227 in the heat there for ninth. Like, did you have any, I know it's always hard to put a number on, like, but the ladies you would have been finishing around probably would have been sub 220 women. Like, did you have any indication of like what shape you were in? Like, and then do you like, do you ever wish you like, give me a flat, fast, cold one?
Yeah, it was. It's like people always ask you that. They're like, "Oh, what shape were you in?" And you're like, you hate to give exact time, because what if you don't run that time? But I felt like I probably was in like 222 like shape at the time. And then you look at the people that I was finishing in front of, or close to, and they're like 217, 219 runners, some of them. So it's hard to say, and everyone handles the conditions differently, but I did feel really fit for that race.
Yeah. Can you remember any of the big workouts that like, give us some like real nerdy like splits about some big ones that you hit leading into that ninth at World Champs?
Oh, I'm trying to remember. So we would do a lot of, and it was kind of similar to Chicago. Like we'll do like pretty big Friday workouts, and then back it up with like, another long run on the weekend. But I'd have to think like probably like 4x5K. We do a lot of like 20 to 25K of 1K on, 1K kind of float. Let me think. Sometimes like 2K on, 1K off. Like pretty much always the Friday workouts are probably 20 to like 30K of work minimum, like every single Friday. So you're always getting like a pretty big boost there. And then actually in this Chicago buildup, we added in kind of like doing a second workout sometimes in the afternoons on like certain days.
Okay, I could see your eyes darting there to, I think, is you said you did some research before we come on this call.
I did.
So is that your training diary for Chicago?
For what?
Is that your training diary for Chicago you're looking over at?
It was like I had written down some things about that I did in Chicago. And then like we do some of this like same workouts, like with a little bit of like pace variation, so you can never look back and see exactly what you did. But I had to like, because you after a buildup, you like, in my mind I forget everything, and I was like, no, I need to actually remember like what I did.
Yeah.
So
big Fridays with potentially a second session in the afternoon, and then like a time on feet long run on the Sundays, or like would you put some quality into that as well?
Yeah, so kind of what we did for Chicago was like Tuesday, I'm always on the track in the morning. So that's like 10 to 12K of like, faster intervals. And then we added in every Tuesday afternoon, I did like it wasn't anything crazy long. It was probably like a 7K tempo in the afternoon, like on dirt, kind of over hills in my trainers. And it was so hot because it was the summer. So it was like, those were miserable. And I actually like dreaded that workout every single week. I was like, it wasn't a big deal because like pace didn't matter, but it was just like so uncomfortable doing those. So I do the track workout, and then I would do, the tempo in the afternoon. And then Friday was always that like 20 to 30K of work. And then Sunday's kind of like an up tempo long run. Kind of the way we do it is like, I don't know, it's probably 45 to 60 seconds slower than marathon pace. So maybe I was doing them between like 6:10 per mile to like 6:30 pace. So like nothing crazy, but like at altitude, just like a good, like a moderate effort, we kind of call it.
And then everything in between is like super easy jogging, or you still get rolling on those off days, like the Wednesday, Thursdays?
Those are pretty easy. So like the three main days are like the Tuesday, Friday, and then the Sunday long. And I couldn't go as long in the Sunday long runs as I had in the past, just like kind of when I was building backup mileage. But I still think that they were quality. It was at least 20 to 22 every single Sunday, which is like 32K probably to like 35K or no more than that. I'd have to think exactly what it is.
Yeah,
But
20 miles is 32K. So, yeah, we're talking, getting
yeah, somewhere around.
37,
So I was
38
right.
kind of thing.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't doubt yourself, Lindsay. You got this. You've got the conversion worked out. By the time the end of this episode, we'll be mathematicians in the conversion for sure. You getting like massage and stuff. Like, these are big weeks. Like maybe in Australia we're just a bit, I wouldn't say precious, but we had Izzy Bat-Doyle fill in for one of my other co-hosts a couple of weeks ago, and she's been running like 205K weeks leading into Valencia this weekend. And like people are losing their mind that she's running 205K weeks, and you're kind of talking about 230, 235K weeks. Like, is it probably more acceptable in America to be high mileage and a lot of the ladies kind of running that over there?
No, I mean, I would definitely say like here, people like, we do love mileage. People run a little bit more. I probably would say like I'm on the higher end of that. I think for Chicago, I probably had 10 weeks between like 210K to like 220K. So like still a good amount of volume, like not the most I had ever done, um, but yeah, and it's funny because I mean, when I'm like looking at the week, you just like you look at the day, you go and do it, and it's not till like the end of the week that you're like, oh wow, that was quite a lot of running.
Yeah. And a lot of recovery in between, like getting massage in the, on the couch a bit, like you're pretty spent, or you can kind of keep the energy levels pretty high throughout that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely massage every week. I also do a lot of like online coaching. So that's a lot of just like sitting on the couch, like, in the Normatec doing your coaching. It's not that glamorous outside of that. Like I'll do the gym, maybe 2 or 3 days a week, but like I don't lift crazy heavy. So yeah, it's a lot of like running and then just kind of getting ready to run again and getting ready for the next workout. And the days that you have the two workouts, it's just kind of like, all right, I'm going to like rest as much as I can so I can feel better in the afternoon.
Yeah. Do you think could you do this pre super shoes and super joggers and stuff as well? Like some of the
I don't
shoes we
think
get to
so.
run in are so good at the moment.
We're so lucky. I mean, I look at the way we're able to train now and it's incredible. Like I don't think I could do, like a 42K day on a Friday, have one day and then turn it around and do 35K like moderate on, Sunday. Like before this, it just wouldn't be possible. And I'm with ASICS and like, man, the trainers are great. I feel like the trainers themselves are almost like a scaled back version of like super shoes. Like you just feel so good when you're in them and their recovery is fantastic.
Yeah, one of my good friends just signed a contract with ASICS a couple of months ago, and I was saying the same thing. I'm like, you've got the race shoes and you've got the big selection of joggers. Like, you're ticking both the boxes, and just so many like options there to be able to train and race in. Like, yeah, very good brand to be with, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then, I mean, obviously, like sometimes you're like, every time I was doing those Tuesday afternoon workouts, I would just like wear trainers. I'm like, I'm not going to put on the super shoes. And then you feel great when you get to put them on. So there's certain days I think you should wear them and certain days you just like leave them.
Yeah, so is that like a super blast for that one? Like, which is still like an amazing shoe for a jogging shoe as well? Would that be what you wear?
Oh, I love the super. No, I would actually wear like an old version of the Magic Speed, which I'm not
Yeah.
even sure if you
Yeah.
know what that shoe is. But like it's kind of like it's what you kind of think of what like your old school flats might have looked like. They're just like they're obviously like not as bouncy, but they're still great. So I would wear a Magic Speed for something like that.
Yeah, that would still, test out a few different muscles in the feet and the legs and stuff as well.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, strengthen those while you're going. Very good. Hey, the decision to come to Adelaide, of all places, to prep for the US Olympic trials. We know you got that connection with Benita, so is that why? And why Adelaide, though? Because many training locations in Australia.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people ask me that. So basically, we kind of like, looked at the map of Australia and I wanted to pick somewhere that was pretty similar climate to Boulder, but at sea level. And so Benita's like, oh, Boulder's obviously very dry, like super hot. I think Adelaide kind of, mimics that. And, world champs went well after running, a whole summer in Boulder, but I knew I wanted to be at sea level just to like recover faster. I knew I needed to be a little bit faster. So we kind of looked and I felt like the climate was relatively similar. So went there, and it actually ended up being like one of their most humid summers, which is kind of funny because it's like normally very dry, but which was fine because Orlando was also humid. And I think, the way we talked about it was Benita was like, well, if you spend too much time in a super humid climate, like that actually could just deplete you a little bit too much. So that's kind of why we picked Adelaide over maybe going to the Gold Coast, where she was like, I just don't think you're going to be able to get the quality that you need in the summer, like in Gold Coast.
Yeah, and you jumped in a bit, I think, with like Tara Palm, Izzy, maybe Jess. Was Jess just coming back from her second baby, maybe? Jess Stenson?
Yeah, I know Jess really well. I actually stayed at her house for part of it and at Izzy's house. And they were all great. Yeah, Jess was coming back, but she still showed me like, all the spots, and we would do easy runs together. And then, yeah, I ran with Tara so much. Like we were at the track every single week. Like PJ was there with the stopwatch. Like that was so nice.
What are some of the things that stood out to you between the difference in like an Australian culture and US culture? Not so much running. Maybe we can go to the running for part 2 of that question.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I feel like Australia, everyone was just more like laid back, more relaxed. Everyone is much nicer, I will say there. Like, and everyone was like so willing to like go out of their way to help you. I was like, I love it here. People are so nice. From a running standpoint, I don't really know if too much was different. Like it seemed like everyone was still kind of on that like Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. I think sometimes some of you guys do like a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, which is like a little bit different from here. But, I didn't think from the running standpoint it was too different.
Yeah. And then how early did you leave to go back to do the trials before the race?
So I want to say I left about 10 days before our trials to go back. And the main thing was obviously just to get used to the time change again.
Yeah. And you felt that was okay going back? Like you pulled it off?
Yeah, I think I was fine. I actually find because the time change is so dramatic, I don't think it's that bad. Like I actually have a really hard time when I go to Europe and it's like that 8 or 9 hours. I think that's tough. But then to have this like I don't even know, I think it was like 18 or 19-hour time change. Like that's actually a little bit easier for me.
Yeah, okay. That was another thing I was whinging about going to Chicago. I'm like, it's too far to travel, knocks you around. Like, yeah. But 10 days, mate.
Deal with that?
Well, I went on the Tuesday for the Sunday race. If I had my time again, I would have went like a bit, maybe 10 days I was just waking up at all hours throughout the night kind of thing. So, but that's okay. That's, it was still a, really good experience. The trials, like 8th, but it's so brutal over there that you got to be top 3 or you're kind of not going anywhere. Like, were you happy with the performance? Because it was still like, so stacked over there in American distance running. So 8th, something you obviously got to be still proud of, but the main goal's got to be top 3.
Yeah, it is. It's so brutal. It's like nothing that you've done before matters. You just have to be on the day, ready to go. So, that was really tough. I thought for sure, I was like, top 3, like I've got this, like, that's right there. And just, I was dealing with like some stomach things in the race, like just wasn't feeling great, like really early on. And that's like, I think it's very hard to finish a race like that when you're out of it and you have to find a reason to kind of, get through it. So that was really disappointing. And, it's one of those things, unless you make the team, unless you're top 3, you're not going to really be happy on the day. So, wasn't thrilled with it, but obviously, there's other races and it does get you excited to, do other things.
Do you like the system? Like you see, Japan do something different. We do something completely different down here in Australia, which had a bit of controversy around our selection for Paris. Like, what's your opinion on the American system and the other ones, I guess?
Yeah. So I like, I think it is fair to have a trials, but I kind of like what Japan does, where obviously top 3 is on their team, but then that 3rd spot, you have this option to kind of like chase the time or kind of chase the spot. And I kind of like that. Like it gives you a little bit of hope. I think it's like, it's good for the sport because there's eyes on it. People are watching what people are doing. So I do think a trials is fair. Like you kind of don't deal with a lot of the, I know you guys had kind of a tough situation down there, and that doesn't really happen as much when it's kind of cut and dry at the top 3. But I do wish that maybe the 3rd spot was a little bit more up for grabs, like after the fact.
Well, then, yeah, it would leave the attention on it, wouldn't it? Like, in a bit of a, choose your own adventure where you go next and all these other storylines still to play out, and someone probably panicking and has to go again in another performance to try to go quicker, that 3rd spot.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. And I do love following the Japanese. And I think this year, the third place spot. Someone went and ran 2:19 and got the spot. So it's like, but there's eyes on it. Like people are watching what's happening. It's just a little bit more dramatic. So that's why I also think it's fun.
Yeah, we should sell this to Netflix. Like this would
I
be a
know.
good
We
TV
get a
series.
documentary going.
Yeah, here we go. The 2025 ASICS Gold Coast Marathon is set to be epic this year. Run your new PB on the flat, fast, scenic course set alongside the stunning Gold Coast beaches. Over 60% of finishers report setting a personal best at the Gold Coast Marathon, and it's not hard to see why, with such a great course. The 2025 event will host the Oceania Marathon Championships, drawing fantastic local running talent to the Gold Coast. Both the full and half marathon are World Athletic Label races, the only race in Australia with dual labels. Whether you're running or spectating, the 2025 ASICS Gold Coast Marathon is the place to be in July. Entries open on the 2nd of December 2025 and they will go quickly. Head to goldcoastmarathon.com.au for more information. That's good. That's good. Did you have any takeaways from training with those Australian girls compared to, the training partners overseas or like where you're based?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, honestly, in Boulder, I have people to do easy runs with, but like all the workouts are solo, everything, all the workouts, the hard ones, I'm doing by myself. But it was great to be over in Australia. I just like to have Tara on the track. And then like we were always meeting for those tempo runs. Like even if we like branched off and did our own thing, just like having someone to meet was really nice. And I do feel like there was maybe more people training together over there, which I thought was really nice. And here, it's a lot of people are training kind of by themselves.
Yeah, so there's not that collaboration in Boulder. Like it feels like everyone we follow lives in Boulder, Colorado, to do their distance stuff, but you do a lot of stuff solo still.
Yeah, and it's really funny. Like we'll all like, do easy runs together, but then everyone's kind of has their own coach, their own program. So like workout days, it's just like every man for themselves, which is funny because like there's all these amazing runners here. So it would make more sense if we all kind of collaborated, but it doesn't always happen.
Yeah. And on Australia, like, are we any chance seeing you come out for Sydney, ASICS race, now World Marathon Major? I think you've done everyone other than Berlin, so surely it's on your radar.
It definitely is. I was even looking at it this past year coming out, but it just would have been too early. I really needed all the weeks I could get. But yeah, I would love to come out and I would love to come back to Gold Coast, even for the half. I mean, the half is so fast. And that would be nice to come back for that too.
Yeah. Well, American record's still set there, isn't it? Or has that gone down? Tomato.
It did go down.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. But still, I mean, a 66 on that course, like obviously it's fast.
Yeah, we got plenty of like sub-elite men who can pace you as well. Like I know Ben St. Lawrence paced Chiara that day. There's plenty of people to put their hands up if you want to try and run American record on Australian soil. You spoke at the start of the show about you're starting to think about what's next in marathoning and stuff. Like, how far out do you have to plan the races? The agents kind of get to work with the offers and things like that. How much input do you have?
Yeah, it's one of those things where as soon as I finished Chicago, my agent was like, okay, we need to know in the next like 3 weeks what you're doing next. I was like, man, give me a minute. But it is a pretty quick turnaround. And I pretty much know now what I'm doing in the spring. So it's crazy that everything kind of is done like by December 1st over here. And I don't know if it's the same way over there, but yeah, it's a pretty quick turnaround to decide.
Yeah. And there's like the American big races for American athletes sounds like it's so appealing. I know, like I read like Cara Gouch's book and just like the money on offer for appearance fees and the separate prize money and things like that. I guess that's probably why we've seen you do Boston a couple of times, Chicago a couple of times, New York as well. So is it hard for other options, I guess, with races to travel to Europe or to Australia to do a marathon when they're up for offer?
Yeah, and I think I've done a good job about like trying to go to other marathons too. Like I've done, Tokyo, Paris, Gold Coast. I'm trying to think of all the other. I mean, I've done a lot of races, but I think as an American athlete, there's a huge incentive to stay in the US because obviously those races take care of you really, really well when you go to them. So I think that's why. I mean, Izzy, I remember, was asking me, like, why don't the Americans ever leave the U.S. to race? Like it's so rare to see, U.S. athletes going to other marathons. And I was like, it's the financial reason. Like, the people stay where they know they're going to get paid.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite of the three big American ones?
Oh, man. I mean, I think so. I ran New York the hot year. I think it was 2021. Jess ran that year as well. She ran fantastic. And even though it was such a brutal race, I loved it. And I would love to go back to New York. Like the crowds are crazy. Like the course is so hard, but it's so rewarding. And I don't know if you've run New York yet, but I think that's my favorite.
Yeah, okay. Well, I thought the crowds were crazy at Chicago. Like, are you telling me it goes up another level from that the first couple of Ks?
Oh my gosh. It's I mean, I think Chicago there's I don't know how many people ran, maybe like 30 something thousand, but New York I think set the record this year. They were close to 60,000 people. And like the spectators are crazy. Oh my, you would love it. Like
Yeah,
you have
okay.
to go if you can.
Yeah, we'll book that in for sure. Tell our wives after the chat that we're now going to New York. Very good. Do you, I love asking people, like, if you're in charge of world athletics for the day, anything in the sport like you'd change or annoys you or like modifications you'd make? Could be anything,
Oh,
track, field, road running, shoe regulations.
yeah, I think a lot of the times, I think the ranking system is it's very confusing. I think it causes problems. Like even kind of if you look at like that, they're gonna have this new road to Tokyo, I think, list coming out soon. But like, I don't know. I think the rankings. I think just something needs to kind of be done with it. Like because sometimes like you think that you've run a great race and you're like, oh, like I probably have like went past certain people, but on the list, some of these times, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I think like I don't know when these rankings, if they ever restart, because some of the times are from like a very long time ago. So it's like, are we changing these? Like, is this a yearly thing? Like, I don't know. I think something needs to change a little bit with that.
Yeah, well, the fact that you're, a professional runner at the very top end and confused about it just means, like,
I
how
know.
do we get that through to the recreational runner who's a fan of our sport, who's trying to follow these runners and who's qualified, who hasn't, what do they got to do to qualify? Like, yeah, it's super confusing, and yeah, I wish they'd. I think now they got the time, but it's just so brutal, especially on the men's, like 2:6:30. Like, but once upon a
Yeah.
time when it was just the time, you're like, okay, go get the time. But now it's really like that's break the Australian record by a minute for our men to even get to the world champs. So pretty
Yeah.
cutthroat, and yeah, such a confusing thing.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, maybe they made the times as hard as they did to maybe promote going off rankings, but the rankings are confusing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I feel as well like traveling isn't really taken into. I know Oceania champs and things like that have extra points, but especially for some of our runners in the 10K on the track, like trying to get to some of the cross country races in Europe where you get like bonus points is just. I feel like a bit of an unfair advantage sometimes for where you're based in the world, which probably shouldn't be the case for a global sport.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely things that need to be changed, and obviously rankings aren't the only thing, but that's the one that stands out to me.
Yeah, good answer, good answer. Hey, tell us more about Benita as a coach. Like, when did you guys start working together? Why Benita? Like, I don't even know anybody else other than you. Maybe some recreational runners here in Australia that are coached by Benita. Like, until you were coached by her, it wasn't really on anyone's radar that Benita was like a elite level,
Yeah.
option.
Yeah, so I coached myself for a year from 2020 to mid 2021. And I was talking to my agent who lives in Boulder. I was like, I was about to get ready to run Chicago in 2021. I was like, I really think I need some guidance. Like, I'm an athlete that will definitely overdo it if like someone's not there to kind of like guide you a little bit. And he was we were like throwing around some ideas, and he was like, oh, you should reach out to Benita Willis. And obviously, like, I knew who she was, but he knew her because she used to live in Boulder for several years. And so he's like, oh, you should just reach out. Like, maybe she'll mentor you. Like, she might not even be coaching, but maybe she can just like give you some ideas. So he kind of put us in touch, and immediately she got back to me. It was like, oh, yeah, we'll love to like hop on a call. So, got on the phone with her, and I was just kind of phrased it as like, oh, will you maybe like mentor me a little bit? Can I send you like the workouts I'm doing? And like, you can think if it's like a good idea or not. And she was like, yeah, like we'll work something out. And then, I mean, after that first call, I never sent her a single workout. She just kind of took the reins and she just started sending me training. And I was like, this is way better than anything I ever came up with. So pretty much it's been a little over 2 years. We've been working together, and I love it.
Yeah, and how's it go, like, obviously being in two different locations, like the communication between you two, like how often do you talk, or, she sees your stuff splits and all that stuff syncs up, I assume, straight from your watch. I did check you weren't on Strava, but yeah, where does she get all the data from?
Yeah, she uses Training Peaks. So like all the workouts kind of, push straight through there. And I'm like a very independent, I feel like at this age, you just like, you go, you do your workouts, that's it. But like, we're always in communication on there, like texting. I probably talk to her on the phone, FaceTime like once a month just to kind of catch up. But no, I think it's great. Like she's very laid back and I love it because she always like kind of gives me a say as well. She'll be like, you know what your body needs, like, you know what you need in training. So if there's something you want to try, like, don't be afraid to ask. So like even this cycle when I was like, oh, can we add in like the second workouts? Can we like up the length of the Friday workouts? She was like, yeah, like I'm never going to say no. Let's just kind of see how you respond to it. And if it doesn't work, then we like kind of go back to things. And that hasn't always been the case with other coaches that I've had. Sometimes it's like my way or no way, but I love that it's more of like a partnership and she's always open to my, input.
Yeah, so good. Is there something that comes through on the program that you're like, yes, I can't wait to do that workout. I love it. And then flip that you're like, shit, that's going to be really hard. I wish you didn't put that on there.
Yeah, I think my least favorite one is we'll do this every marathon cycle. It's like a 30K tempo run, and it's like a progressive tempo run. But just when you see that on paper, I don't know why. And it wouldn't bother me at sea level, but it's something about having to do that at altitude. It is so hard, and it's just like you're not getting these glamorous splits. It's just like it's miserable. So I think I see that one, and I absolutely hate it. But then the other side of that is I love that like K on K float. Like I could do that for 30K and be so happy, but it's that like progressive tempo run that I absolutely hate.
Yeah, okay. And all those solo as well. Like, that's a long time in your own head, a
It's
progressive 30K.
Yeah, it is a lot, but then you think like in these big races, half the time you do end up like running by yourself or you're like chasing someone down. So I'm like, you have to be so comfortable just like being with yourself for a really long time.
Yeah. And then, is she one of those coaches, if you miss a run or you do something that you like go a bit quick, like, will she pull you up on that, or it's all just very chilled out, like you're kind of describing?
Yeah, it's super chill. Like if I'm like, oh, I was, faster, and she'll be like, okay, well, if you felt good and you recovered well, then, that's fine. And I think the Chicago block was kind of funny. I think I very rarely for the tempo stuff, like got specific paces. A lot of it was like, you're just going to have to feel it out when you're out there. And I kind of appreciated that because I don't think she wanted me to like feel bad if you're not like where you used to be. So I kind of like that. And then you kind of end up surprising yourself when you're not like obsessed about pace.
Yep. What else is on your piece of paper there, Lindsay? Like any workouts like that, like details of splits or anything you can share with us?
Oh man, I'm trying to look exactly. I think about a month out, we'll always try and do like one, I don't know, tempo like close to race pace or something. So I'm in Boulder, which is like 5,500 feet here. And so I think for that one, it was like I think I did 18K at like 325, 326. And so I was like, okay, like I feel, and that was like in the middle of like a 220K week. And I was like, okay, I think like that was pretty solid. I have no idea what this means at sea level, but it's got to be faster than this. And so, and it was like a race pace ended up being faster than that. So I'll take it.
Yeah, so good, so good. Hey, I like to find out more about like your day to day, like let the listeners know more than just running Lindsay Flanagan. So what do you do? Like you said, online coaching a bit before, but what do you do to like relax? Any sports you're watching? Netflix, books? Like what do you do in your spare time?
Yeah, so my brother and my sister both live in Boulder, so honestly, spend a lot of time with them. I do online coach as well, so I'm doing calls with athletes, writing training. Prior to Chicago, I was probably coaching like about 40 athletes, so that keeps me, pretty busy.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of like reading, Netflix, like nothing, honestly, it's nothing glamorous, but like the days go fast. People are like, what do you do all day? I'm like, by the time you run, you do your coaching, you run again, you're like, it's 6 o'clock and the day's done.
Yeah. Do you have a set time you work out every day, or because you do most of your stuff solo, you can kind of get out whenever it suits you?
Well, I mean, obviously in this, I think it's like if you want to meet people to warm up, like most of my friends do have jobs. So it's like, all right, you're just going to get up early and go. So especially in the summer when it's hot, we're pretty much meeting at like, 7 o'clock every day. But then in the winter, that kind of like, right now it's starting to get cold. So I probably am like starting my workouts around 9 a.m. just honestly because it's just a little bit warmer.
Just a bit more pleasant to be out there, yeah. And then how do you, because it snows and stuff, doesn't it? Like you shoveling the track and stuff and like running with spikes in your shoes or anything like that?
So I don't shovel the track, but luckily we have a lot of we have the on team here. Like Dathan Ritzenheim's here with like Helen O'Berry. So Dathan is always out there shoveling the track, and so you just kind of hope that you hit the track on a day that they're also doing a workout because it's going to be clear. But obviously, if you can't get on a track, then I just have these like funny road loops that I'm doing.
Okay, we've got a couple of Aussies in that group as well, Ollie Hoare and Morgan McDonald. So the Aussie connection continues throughout this chat.
It does. I ran an 8K yesterday with Pat Tiernan. So
Oh,
there
really?
you go.
Yeah. Did Pat say what he's got coming up? Because we did hear he was potentially going to run Valencia, but then he's not on the Valencia start list. So Pat's a bit mysterious in ways. So any rumours would be much appreciated.
I'm trying to think. He did not say he was running Valencia. I think he said that was his first one since Paris. So I think he just said he was kind of getting back into things.
Yeah, just building back up. No, that's good. Some Pat Tiernan intel. What about, when you said the Netflix and books before, what kind of stuff are you consuming? Give us a recommendation for our listeners.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm obsessed with true crime. So like all things true crime. I don't know if that's like a very popular over there, but here that's like, so like probably hours and hours of podcasts when I'm running. That's like all I'm listening to is true crime. Let's think. What else am I watching? Books. I'm still like, I'll read a little bit of anything. I've been really into all the Kristen Hanna books. And then what am I watching right now? Oh, I don't know. Do you do Apple TV over there?
Yeah. That exists in Australia. Yep.
Are you watching Silo?
I haven't watched it, but I've seen I've seen it pop up there. Like Ted Lasso. What else? There was something else. There's a British
Oh, Bad Sisters is really good. That's also on there.
That's why they got all those good TV shows on there, but they just don't advertise it. And you just got to go find them.
You do. That's kind of the funny thing about that. Like, I don't know if you watch Severance. That's also a great one. But a lot of Apple TV, actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
Oh, that's good. Hey, Lindsay, is there a question I should have asked you that I didn't? I always like to finish this show, the episode off with asking that question. Like anything we need to know about Lindsay that I haven't asked today.
Are you coming back to Gold Coast in 2025?
Yeah, well, we're at Gold Coast every year. So we usually do a big live show with Lululemon as well. So we had Benita as our guest last year. I think there was 550 people there in the audience. We book out this big amphitheater and we do a live show. Jess Stenson, she's with Lululemon, so she usually jumps on stage as well. So when you said you're going to come out maybe for the half, I was like, bang, you're on stage with
I would love that.
That's good. So we'll be there. And then, if you want to run the half, I'll give you Brad Croker as a pacemaker again. He'll be more than, the full. You can actually do the half too if you want to run 66. So we can organise a live show and a pacemaker for you.
That sounds fantastic. I mean, that sounds like the best weekend, all inclusive.
Yeah, that is. And Gold Coast is a good city. Like it's a good party kind of city as well. And it's pretty. When you talked about Australia being relaxed, Gold Coast is pretty relaxed as well.
Yeah, I loved it. I went to Gold Coast, and then in that same trip afterwards, I went to is it Noosa? I think I went to Noosa for the week. So. Yeah, that was a great trip.
Yeah, some good beaches and stuff over there up that way. So, and hopefully some friendly people. Oh, Lindsay, thanks so much for your time. An hour goes quick when you're talking running and you're so open with your answers and stuff like that. And so, the listeners can't follow you. You are on Strava. You're just not putting anything up. But is Instagram the best place to keep updated?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. That's what I'll share some things, obviously, with training. I need to be better about, social media in general. But it's hard if you don't have someone filming your workouts for you. You're like, I don't have the content to put out there.
Yeah.
So
do you feel pressure with that in this era of running and all you got to do is open your phone and see that there's 5,000 people putting up running content and you might be the best runner out of all those people. But then if you're not putting up content, you might get left behind.
Yeah, it is one of those funny. I think it's great because ASICS has never put pressure on us to have to post and things. They're like, we care about results. That's the main thing. We don't really care about the social media. So there's never been pressure for that. But then sometimes I'm like, oh, it would be nice to have like something to share with people. I just like when you don't have a photographer out there, I'm like, I just don't have like somebody to do it for me. So
Yeah. I've been enjoying like Clayton Young stuff. Like obviously he's employed someone to
yes.
do the content for him. Like do you think that's
Yeah.
where elite athletes will start going if they've got a budget to be like, just follow me around and I'll keep doing all the running that you're doing every other day of the week, but now start
Yeah.
capturing and making the content for me?
Yeah, I can see it going that way, and I loved his docu series. Like he did the before the Olympics. And then my sister works for Stride, and he's also partnered with Stride, so he's done a lot of content for them, and he's so good at it, and it is really enjoyable to watch. So I think there's definitely a way to make it interesting if you just have someone that kind of does it for you.
Yeah. Have you got the problem? We got a bit of a problem in Australia that a lot of people making running content are fairly new to running, and then they're putting out like opinions and this is how you break 4 hours for the marathon or 20 minutes for 5K. And it's just like a bit of like this misinformation, which is happening in every area of life. But we're seeing a lot of that in Australia. That's just like, just because it looks good and it looks sexy on Instagram and it's shot like these beautiful, beautiful coverage and cuts of it all. Just be careful where you're getting your content at the moment.
Yeah, I was having this conversation with someone the other day. Like, everyone thinks they're a coach now, even if they've
Yeah.
only been running for like 1 month. And I'm like, gosh, I just wish there was a way to tell people. Because then, as a coach to athletes, they'll be like, oh, well, I saw this thing that someone posted. I'm like, no, don't look at that. I don't even know who that is, you
Yeah.
know? And so it definitely is a problem, but you're just like, you got to kind of like sift through some of that stuff.
Yeah, and that's where, Benita, a world champion cross country runner, is sitting at home and someone's like recommended you to like reach out for advice. Like we've got these people with a lot of knowledge who aren't putting themselves out there on like front and center Instagram who know probably a million times more than what some other people are talking about.
Yeah, for sure. And I like, that's why I love Benita because she's quiet, she's humble, but she is probably, I mean, she's the greatest Australian distance runner that like ever
Yeah.
existed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, she certainly is. She's a legend as well. Hey, Lindsay, thanks so much for your time on this Sunday afternoon on your time. Really appreciated your chat today. And thanks for coming on.
yes, thanks for having me. I'll chat anytime.
Set your new PB at the ASICS Gold Coast Marathon. Make sure you grab your entry before they sell out. Head to goldcoastmarathon.com.au for more info.